Hello everybody. It's a real pleasure for us to have you all during our webinar about efficient vendor risk management process. Before I start the main part of the presentation, I would like to share a few words about me and to tell you a story that somehow impacted my life and will be reflected in the presentation. Some observation from the history. Then about me. I graduated from Warsaw Military University of Technology, Cybernetics faculty. The funny fact is that it was not only in the previous century, but in the previous millennium too. After my military career, I joined one of the biggest telecommunications operator, T-Mobile, where I was responsible for data warehousing, business intelligence, advanced analytics, and just the beginning of big data approach. And more or less 10 years ago, I decided to slightly update my career path, joining T-Mobile, joining CNF, where I am responsible for governance, risk management, and compliance activities. And 5 years ago, I decided to not only be a participant during the conferences, but also to make additional contribution and to be a public speaker in the area of my expertise. And right now there is a time for a short story that impacted my life. And it was several years ago, during a barbecue party, my friend told to me, "Jan, you are quite active in different sport activities, and there is a marathon run in 3 weeks' time from now. Why don't you join me in this engagement?" And you know, this was a BBQ party, and each BBQ party has the same rules. Eating and drinking highly recommended. Having this in mind, my flexibility in the decision process was slightly above the average level. Then after a while, I replied, "Why not? Awesome idea. 3 weeks, it's a plenty of time. Then a marathon run is 26 miles long or 42 kilometers, but I thought that I can be ready. And just during the preparation, just 3 days before the marathon run, I finished my longest preparation run, 8 kilometers, something around 5 miles. I thought I was ready, but I wasn't. The marathon run painfully verified my initial assumptions. I completed, but I was so exhausted that I can only walk like the first version of the Terminator. No human thoughts in my life, only one thought. Okay, mission completed, but never do this again. But it's always good to draw conclusions from your activities. Then I would like to share during my presentation 3 with you. The first one will be right now. It took me almost 5 hours to complete the marathon run, and I promise that my today presentation will be significantly shorter. Okay, let's get started. Some say that with vendors is like in a marriage. If everything is going okay, everybody is happy, but you have to carefully maintain your relation, because if something happens, everybody will suffer. Then let's see what kind of learning objectives will be covered today. I would like to guide you through the vendor risk management process, focusing on how to create vendor risk profiles, how to create recommended steps to ensure third-party compliance, and how to choose most risky vendors for audit, and how to mitigate risk coming from third parties. And just one comment at the beginning, just for the purpose of this presentation, following words like vendor, subcontractor, data processor, service provider, or third party, they will be used like they will have the same meaning. Of course, This is just for the purpose of this presentation, and the short definition what the subcontractor and vendor is. This is an external party that is delivering any kind of service that has a value for our company. Okay. And right now I would like to highlight the first step, the challenges connected with vendors, just to be on the same page and have the common understanding. Then to tell you about recommended steps, how to ensure vendor compliance. And then later I would like to share with you a case study, but this will be a special case study, not a standard business one. Then I believe you will find it not only interesting, but also informative. And then later I will focus with you how to summary and what could be our approach to introduce the vendor risk management process. Okay, let's jump into the first part, challenges connected with vendors. And each month you can find in different media sources information about problems with vendors, data breaches, data leakages, problems with cooperation, money lost. For example, last year in May, NASA announced that a metal manufacturer faked test results of metal equipment, resulting that NASA lost 2 satellites and $700 million. And okay, there is a question to NASA, why don't you do this on your own? And NASA replied, it's too complicated. It's so complicated that we have to rely on our vendors. But we have to have in mind that the problems with vendors could create the loss of reputation. There could be, we can be punished and we can pay penalties for being not compliant from regulator. Or of course, there is our legal responsibility and of course, operational business interruption. And right now, I would like to highlight with you 2 cases from Poland that I believe could give you broader context why the good information about vendors are important. Okay, back in 2014, we had political elections in Poland. And there was a task before the voting process that the government decided to change the voting system, not just to vote, but to count the votes from 25,000 electoral commissions, 31 million possible votes. Even the decision was great because there was a purely manual system, but sometimes it happens that the vendor selection criteria, there was only one selection, lowest price. It's still very popular, and based on my experience from the other conferences, I know that it's very popular in many countries. And the second, development time, very short, just to develop the system from scratch in a few months. And vendor risk profile, unfortunately, not prepared. This was the reason why a small company won the bid. And what was the problem? As the electoral commission began to start submitting the votes, the system started to generate incorrect data and then later crashed because it was overloaded. What was the impact? Of course, the announcement of the result has been delayed by several days. It was huge political and social scandal. And of course, at the end of the day, the vendor company went bankrupt. And the second example, telecommunications operator would like to extend hotline capabilities just to better deliver service to the customers. And they hired external marketing agency just to support the telecommunication operator in that process. But unfortunately, some of the external consultants worked not only for T-Mobile, but also for its competitor. They just searched the databases to distill the information about the contracts that are close to the due date. And the competitor could prepare the better offer and convince the person to change the network operator. Right now, of course, the case is in the court right now. Okay, having this knowledge, there is always a question. Why do we need vendors or subcontractors? If they are so risky, maybe it's better to do this on our own. But there are some key drivers that I would like to share with you to give you better understanding why do we need vendors. The first of all is, of course, that they could share us resources that we do not have in our organization. Secondly, they can help us to save time in our projects, delivering the additional resources. Of course, they can share with us skills that we do not have in the organization. And last but not least, of course, as we pay them only for the work delivered, then they can be competitively priced. As we have guests here during our presentation from the US, then it's always possible to change the money, no problem. Okay, and right now I would like to share with you the second example from NASA, and this was a very successful Apollo mission and the Saturn V rocket launch. And I would like you to focus on this short movie and the list on the right with the subcontractors, how many subcontractors were involved in the process of the rocket creations. Just one comment. It will be mentioned only the most important subcontractors, the main one.
Roger, we got a roll program. Flight Fido, go with the IP. Roger, Roger, repeat.
As you can see, more than 300 vendors were involved in the process, and the cooperation, the network of vendors, because the vendors could have their own vendors, subcontractors to the so-called fourth parties to deliver the components. It's very complicated achievement just to deliver everything on time. And right now there is time for the next example. I would like to share with you Apple and Samsung. They are both companies, probably the biggest competitors in the electronic industry. There are dozens of cases, Apple against Samsung, Samsung against Apple in the courts, but sometimes miracle happens. Back in 2017, Apple announced his new brand product, iPhone X, with this beautiful Retina screen. And on that time, the only company that could deliver this high resolution screens was Samsung. Then just they made the partnership that Apple expected to sell more than 100 million devices. And this meant for Samsung almost $11 billion of income from the cooperation with Apple. Of course, the reality was slightly less optimistic, but still very good that Samsung earned on that cooperation above $9 billion. The funny fact is that $9 billion, it was higher value from the cooperation with Apple than from the sales of Samsung flagship product Galaxy Note 8. Back in 2015, we did a research project together with the University of Los Angeles just to better understand the market in the US with regards to GRC processes and especially vendor risk management process. And our focus was on the US and the sectors from the regulated industry, excluding some sectors like the financial one. And I would like to share with you three observations, three recommendations that I believe could give you a broader context. What is the situation? Based on the research, only less than 12% of companies could afford to have the enterprise level solution and they can cover the GRC and vendor risk management processes. But 30% of the respondents admitted that they do not know if the process is implemented in the organization. But please remember, we ask the question to the risk managers, to the audit managers, to the procurement, then it's pretty much high number, 30% from that focus group. And the last and not least, I believe that there is only one king, because the remaining companies, they have something in place. And of course, there's a one king, King Excel. Everything is manual and spreadsheet driven. Having this in mind, I would like to share with you some more details regarding the chosen challenges associated with vendors. And right now, I would like to share a few of them with you. The first one, and this is the common one, we do not have a list of vendors. Then, of course, we have to create something, but how? The second, we have many lists of vendors, manual process, spreadsheet driven. Okay, the next one, we have too many vendors and it's hard to manage risk effectively. The next one, we do not know services that our vendors are delivering for us. It's good to have a vendor, but what kind of service is he delivering? We don't know. We don't have resources to audit or assess our vendors. The next one, we don't have a solution in place. And this is one of my favorite ones, we don't have a budget to mitigate risk coming from third parties. Of course, the budget constraints, this is the common denominator for all activities, and I believe this common, well-known excuse not to do something because of the budget. And the last one, vendors could have vendors, and this means, as in the example of NASA, that the main vendor could have the subcontractor and the subcontractor could have the next subcontractor. There's a chain of vendors. And for example, if we take into consideration the GDPR regulation and we are the administrator, then if something happens in the chain of vendors, we are responsible for the activities. Okay. Then right now I would like to share you something I believe interesting. This is a General Data Privacy Act regulation, but not from the perspective of the legal guys, but from the IT perspective. Then I will explain what is shown on this picture. As you can see here, we have many bubbles, dots. Each bubble means one article. The same color of articles mean the same category of articles. The size of the bubble means how important is this article and how many references from other articles is pointing exactly this particular article. And of course, the lines are the connection between the articles. And as you can see in the middle, there's a pink bubble, the biggest one, and this is very famous article. Article 83. General conditions for imposing administrative fines. Then even the GDPR regulation was designed to harmonize the data privacy in all European Union countries. There is still the fine dimension. And I distilled from the entire article set only those articles that have direct connection with this pink monster, and right now I just outlined those articles that have references to the vendor management, subcontractors, data processors, and administrators. Then, as you can see, there's quite a lot of articles in the GDPR regulation that have the connection to the fine. Then, from that perspective, it's really important to have a solid vendor risk management process in place, because the fines are quite severe. Everybody knows that GDPR is even more than 20 million or 2% or even 4% of the annual income. Then now is a question how to start an efficient vendor risk management process. Then I would like to, of course, show you how to start. But before that, I would like to share with you a very interesting movie. This is a Polish comedy created that Polish comedy director, Mr. Bareja. Some compared Mr. Bareja to the Woody Allen because his observation from 70s and 80s of past century were so accurate that they are even valid right now. Then I would like to show you something, how the process could look like.
Aha. O. Co to są te?
Spółdzielcze punktowce.
Aha.
Panie dyrektorze,
Tak?
tu jest jezioro.
A, to nie, to nie. A nie, dobrze. To jezioro damy tutaj, a ten niech sobie stoi w zieleni.
Yeah, as you can see, sometimes it's not easy to move the legs. Then I would like to show you something more tangible and that you can implement potentially in your organization. Recommended steps to ensure vendor compliance. Some time ago, there was a famous discussion between Cheshire Cat and Alice in Wonderland. And during this discussion, Alice would like to go somewhere, but she didn't know where to go. And the cat replied, okay, you always get somewhere if you walk long enough. This means that there are different ways to achieve your goals, and I would like to show you one of the potential ways that, in our opinion, do not have the obstacles on the road and is easy to achieve. Just one clarification. Today we will, I'm focused on the vendor lifetime, and from that perspective, we can divide vendor lifetime into 3 steps. The first one is, of course, the onboarding of the subcontractor. In the middle is the longest process, the relation management, while the vendor is delivering a service for us. And the last one is, of course, the offboarding, if we do not longer need the service delivered by the vendor. Today, I'm focused on the middle part, the vendor relation management. And right now, I would like to show you the possible approaches to introduce vendor risk management process. The first one is Agile for the Braves. It's look strange, but I will explain how the process looks like. And the good information is that for majority of organization, this process is already implemented. The second one is from the vendor side, and the third is from the services perspective and from the process perspective. Today, I will cover the Agile for the Braves and from the vendor side, but good information is that this from vendor side is the most comprehensive process. Then you can distill the approach if you would like to start from services or from the process perspective. There's not a problem just to create your own tailored approach. But the vendor is the most comprehensive and the recommended one. Okay, Agile for the Braves. Let's see. Okay, something happened in the organization. There was a potential data leakages. Then what we have to do? We have to find an available SMEs, subject matter experts, who can help us to better understand what really happened. They have to analyze all the potential data sources, information sets, to better understand the situation and to find the solution, explain the situation. What was the problem? What was the root cause? And if this is explained, then we have to keep our fingers crossed that this will never happen again. And during the process, there's only one rule: don't panic. And right now, there is a moment for my second observation from the marathon run. It looks like exactly my decision thinking pattern while deciding to participate in the marathon. I made a decision, then I have to find different media sources to better prepare. And after completing the marathon, I decided to never do this once again. This is not the best way, the wrong one. Then I believe I can share with you something better and more matured. Right now, I am going to show you 8 steps to an efficient vendor risk management program. And in the first step, we have to create or consolidate a list of vendors that we have in the organization. Of course, we can have many different data sets, databases, Excel spreadsheets in the organization. Different people are responsible for that. Then what we have to do? We have to do a consolidated list of vendors that on one page we have to ensure that all crucial informations are included about all the vendors. Right now I would like to share with you 2 tips because it's good to start the process, but it's always required to have, for example, we can start the process during the vendor consolidation projects, assuming the potential cost rationalization in the organization, or it would be helpful, really helpful, if you gather from different information sources similar information about all the vendors. This will be required because on one of the next steps we have to do a kind of filtering. Then we have to ensure that we have the same information about vendors. Okay, step 1, create or consolidate list of vendors. Let's see the step number 2. We have to create list of services that you consider relevant to your organization. And there could be, of course, the list of services. It has to be tailored to your organization. What kind of services are important to your organization, like data hosting, data processing, or system maintenance. For example, for one organization, the service name cloud applications will be okay, but for the next one, maybe the cloud applications in Azure or cloud application in AWS, it will be better. It depends on the organization. And in the longer run, it's recommended just to have the hierarchy of services. Why? Because this is just an example, but it could happen that you will define for your organization hundreds of services. Then the hierarchy, of course, helps. And of course, you have to assign importance to the service, because the services could have different importance and different impact into the organization. It is always good to have this kind of definition in place. Step number 3, the relation between vendors and services. Okay, we have vendors defined in one place, the single version of the true of vendors. Then we have a list of services. Then let's make the relations. Okay, we have the relations. It's good activity because it could show you for what kind of services the vendor are responsible, and from the other side you can potentially could find the services that the vendors are that there are no vendors attached. This activity is good for the vendor consolidation because, for example, you can distill the less risky or the best vendors, and they can cover the similar services, and that could improve your company performance. Of course, not at the beginning, but later, if your process will be matured, it's good to have the services categorization to assign the responsible, accountable person in the organization, because the buying process in the organization will be significantly better. Step number 4. Is the process important for us? We have to filter out the vendors, assuming some kind of categorization, filtering rules, like service categories, business processes, services, phases, and so, because this process is crucial, because it could happen that your organization could deal with thousands of vendors. Then you have to focus on the most important ones. And there is one very important tip that I can share with you, that the filtering criteria should be harmonized in the organization, no exceptions. You cannot play with different approaches, because in the longer run you can create a mess, and it's rather not recommended approach. Then please remember, filtering criteria should be harmonized and the same among the organization. Step number 5, create a vendor risk profile. Quick explanation, the step number 4 was required because the step number 5 is the time-consuming process. We have to verify all the vendors from the services perspective, what kind of risks they could create, and from the entity perspective. There are just example questions that you can take into consideration, and sometimes it's good to leverage knowledge, of course, available in your organization, but you can enrich the data with additional information sources like DNB, Dun & Bradstreet, and so. They have quite a good information related to the vendors that they captured from the market. And right now, I would like to even explain it more details. This is example of the vendor risk profile. There's a matrix. We have 2 dimensions, the service risk score and the entity risk score. And as you can see, each dot on that picture, this means one vendor. Yeah? And for the majority of vendors, it's recommended just to do only a self-assessment, that I will show in a moment how to do the self-assessment based on the compliance objectives defined for the organization. But there is one vendor in the red zone that on-site audit will be required. One comment from my side, one of our customers reduced significantly the need for the on-site audits because they can verify the vendor, the risk for vendors before that, and maintain the compliance based on the online assessments. And it's pretty much important process for the organization. Okay, let's go to the step number 6. Check the vendor compliance and risks during the self-assessment. Then we have to initiate the assessment, send the invitation to the vendor. Dear John, we invite you to participate in our assessment. This is, of course, initiated from the system where the compliance objectives are defined. It's easy to distill the checklist that the vendor should follow. The checklist automatically should tailor to the expectations, to the regulation, and to the scope of services and the risk profile defined for the vendor. Then, for example, if the vendor is delivering us many services, then the company should answer for the certain set of questions tailored for the organization, not the big list just from all the regulation, but just something already filtered out. And as we can see, we will have output from the vendor, the questions, the risk rating, and the responses. For some compliance objective, the answer is yes, but for some other, there are no or partial. Then we have to manage what we can do next because there are some gaps, there are some findings, and assuming that we have hundreds or even thousands of vendors, it's a very complicated process how to manage this effectively. Then I will show you how to do that. But before that, I would like to once again show you the second movie created by the Polish comedy movie director, Mr. Barea. What could happen in the organization if there is no process to maintain the plans and so. Then let's see.
Jak wyglądamy z planem?
Więc jeżeli chodzi o plan, to 96%.
Prawdę mi mów.
Więc prawdę to 75%.
Powiedziałem prawdę.
Prawdę, no. Prawdę to... No to kto to może wiedzieć, panie dyrektorze?
Okay, this could be the reality. Then let's see how to do this in different way. After vendor check, we can create the list, initial register of potential gaps, findings, observations, or recommendations that it need to be maintained. And we have to assign during the planning process the accountable persons to track all the activities. We have to execute them and, of course, to monitor them. This is the cycle. This is a process that we have to ensure it will be efficient because this is not one-time activity. And of course, during the periodic review, some of the risk will be mitigated, and we can ensure that the maturity level of our organization and our cooperating vendors will be improved. With regards to the risk management, I would like to show you the last step because it's really important to focus on the risk management process. This is, very popular risk matrix that we have the impact and probability, and each number means that there is some risk associated with vendor in the matrix. Then, of course, everything above the green zone is above our risk appetite. Then we have to ensure how to mitigate some of the risks beyond our risk appetite into our acceptable level. Then some say that this arrow is called the cruel arrow. Why? Because you have to ensure that you secure the time to do the mitigation, you secure the budget to do that, and of course, resources. And the funny fact is sometimes to mitigate the risk from the vendors, you have to assign other vendors to mitigate the risks. Okay, and right now I would like to sum up. I'm showing you the 8 steps how to ensure vendor compliance. Then the step number 1, create the list of vendors. Then create the list of services. In the next step, of course, you have to make the relations between vendors and services. Later, to focus on the most important vendors on the first phase, do the filtering. Then create the vendor risk profile to better understand your vendor risk landscape. Do the assessment and compliance verification. And based on the assessment, you have to maintain the gaps and findings. And of course, you have to understand how to mitigate the risk coming from vendors. Okay, this was the process. And right now, I would like to show you the promised case study. As I said, this will be something unusual. I prepared this. I tried to prepare something that will be not only informative but also interesting. Then, right now, I would like to take you in a journey. The journey back in time to the 1940 Battle of Britain. And based on this example, I would like to explain the vendor risk management process based on the Battle of Britain example. And by coincidence, today is 15th of September, and this is the Battle of Britain Day. Just to be on the same page, the main fights were the dogfight were between 10th of July and 31st of October 1940, and among almost 3,000 pilots, except British pilots, there were pilots from 13 different countries, and the second biggest nation, there were pilots from Poland. Then, based on this context and example, I would like to guide you through the 8 recommended steps how to ensure vendor compliance. Okay, let's go into the step number 1. Create the vendor list. Okay, we have it on the screen, vendors from 13 countries. Then let's go to the step number 2. What kind of service they can deliver? And of course, there were fighter pilots and bomber pilots. And so far so good. We have vendors, we have services, then we have to make the relation, we have to create the relation based on the Polish pilots. Yeah, we will have the service, the fighter pilots and bomber pilots. Then we created the relation, and we have the we just completed the step number 3. But let's go into the step number 4. In step number 4, we have to verify the need to creating the vendor risk profile. Then, just to be on the same page, let's see what was the situation. Each day and nights, our cities, our airfields, our harbors, they were bombed by the before the invasion by the enemy. And on the other side of the English Channel, millions of soldiers were waiting for the successful of the dogfight to begin the invasion. Then at that time, there's a question, was the service important for us? Yeah, it was one of the most important services that we can imagine. Then for sure, the vendor risk profile, step number 5. The British commanders, they did, of course, their homework, and they created the vendor risk profile with regards to the Polish pilots. Let's see what was on their list. They do not know British combat tactics, it was true. They do not have experience with modern planes like Hurricane or Spitfire. Insufficient command of English, and I would like to explain this one. Just imagine the situation that all pilots from all the countries except Polish pilots, they were fighting, but Polish pilots were supposed to pick up the English knowledge, riding the bicycles on the airfields and trying to behave in the air, having the radio communication installed on the bicycles. Then from that perspective, as I am the former Polish soldier, I cannot even imagine how irritating the situation was for them. Then the last observation, they were too eager to fight with the enemy. And during one of the test missions, the Polish pilots spotted enemy planes. Then I believe it's the best way to explain that, how they joined the battle, just seeing in the short movie.
Na dole! Nie widzę ich! Gdzie? Na dole, na prawo! Idę na nich! Widzę ich!
Stop that Polish chatter and steer 230.
Repeat, please.
I say again, 230.
Repeat, please.
For crying out loud, 230.
Repeat, please.
Repeat, please.
Repeat, please.
Now just shut up, the lot of you, and follow me. Unless you're blind as well as... Oh, God's truth.
This was the situation just after the test mission. They were punished, but after 3 hours later, the British commander decided, okay, you can join the battle. Then step number 6, check the vendor compliance assessment during the battle. Then during the battle, it happens that they were extremely good pilots. They have broad battle experience, and their direct fight tactics was even better than expected, the 5-to-1 ratio. I will explain what it means. In the British direct fight tactics, it was stated that you have to start shooting into the enemy plane from the distance of 500 yards, because the closer distance was perceived as too risky. But Polish pilots decided to start shooting into the enemy plane from the distance closer than 100 yards. But let's see how complicated it was, because the plane were going up and down, left and right, bumpy. Then let's see how it looks. Okay, and they were incredibly efficient. And why? Because during the first mission, the famous Polish Squadron 303 destroyed 6 enemy planes just in 50 minutes. And of course, it was a small drop in the ocean of needs, but you know, it gave the promise to all the allies that it's not the end of the game. You can still win the war. Then step number 7 and 8, gaps and findings management and risks. It's not required. Let them fly. And right now, I would like you to read and see the summary given to all the pilots from all the countries by the Prime Minister, Mr. Winston Churchill, and I want you to hear it now.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Yep. Then let's go into the summary. Once again, I'm showing you the 8 steps. The step number 1, to create the list of vendors, then to create the list of services, and to make the relation, to filter out the most important vendors, to prepare the vendor risk profile. In step number 6, to send and verify the compliance using the assessment, and to manage the gaps and finding, and of course to prepare the risk mitigation plan for the organization. Then this is a path how to follow. Right now I would like to show you one of the recommendations that I believe could be beneficial for any organization. It's always good to start something small and then grow. For example, you have to be agile to better understand the needs, but not to focus on the end state and wait for the end state, because the lead time could be very long. It's better to start from something small. For example, something tangible. Let's assume there's how to create the vendor list or the list of services, how to make the relation between vendors and services, because this could give us a lot of benefits, and you can start using the solution, the business process, almost from day one. And of course, I presented you the path, but
there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
There's always a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. There is a significant difference. Now you know the path, but it's your decision if you would like to only know the path or to follow the path. And right now I believe it's a good moment to make a summary. As I said, I decided to participate in my first marathon, and it wasn't the best decision of my life, but this was just the break-even point, because till this moment I participated in several dozens of different marathons, half marathons, 10K runs. Then sometimes it's good to be just an observer, just to stand on the line and cheers for others. You can make it, you can make it. But sometimes it's good to join the game, to be part of the game, even if the beginning could be bumpy or challenging, like with my first marathon run. And at the end of the day, it's always your decision if you would like to only know the path or you would like to implement and follow the path. Thank you for your participants in my webinar. It could be the last slide of my presentation, but it's not. There is one more thing. For the registered participants, we will send shortly information about the articles about how to ensure vendor compliance and third-party risk mitigation, and in the Medium, the same information written in 2 articles. Then I believe you can elaborate a little bit more reading the articles with 8 steps presented. And there is something more. There are 2 more things. We would like to invite you to the online questionnaire, which is quite funny because you will see the live results directly on the screen. There is a code. You have to go into the web page www.menti.com and just to input this number shown on the screen. This is of course anonymous, no data, personal data is captured, just your answers. And if you would like to participate, and strongly encourage you to participate in our assessment process. Okay, let's wait for the participants. And we will start in, let's say, 60 seconds. There is a first question. Where do you store information about your vendors? Okay, the first person in the spreadsheets, then, okay, good, 100% spreadsheet driven. But the mixed solution, IT systems and spreadsheets, it's quite popular too. Okay. More mixed solution. There are only 6 questions, then it will be quite a quick questionnaire. It's always good to participate. And we are going to send to you the information that we captured during the different events, and you will see what is the landscape captured during other assessments that we did in the past. Okay, let's wait a moment because always it's quite a time consuming to join the questionnaire. Then let's go to the next question. Okay, how many vendors do you cooperate with? And see what will be the output. Two answers. Let's wait for the okay. More people. Okay, then let's go to the next question. Okay. Oops, too fast. GDPR. Do you know all of your data processors responsible for personal data processing? I'm really curious what. Okay, no. Not my responsibility. Good answer. Quite convenient. And during one of the ISACA conferences, the answer yes, there were more than 200 participants, was given by only 30%. Then even after 2 years after the GDPR introduction, there is still quite a lot of work to do. Okay, let's go to the question number 4. Does your company have a consolidated list of vendors for all types of services? Okay, no. Let's wait a moment for the remaining answers. Good. One answer yes. Good to know. The maturity is quite high in that scenario. Okay, let's go to the question number 5. Do you know the security level of the IT systems maintained by your vendors? I'm really curious what the answers will be. Okay. Okay. And right now the last question, the question number 6. Do you know all your systems and processes that are managing privacy data? This is the last question. Okay, thank you for your participation. I believe it was quite interesting activity for you. And of course, we are going to show you the results after the webinar. And I would like to thank you for the participation during our webinar. This was the first webinar, and we have a plan to prepare the next webinars in the future. Then, if you would like to know more about my company and the services, you can always go into the webpage www.cndef.com or www.adaptivegrc.com. Then see you in the future. Thank you very much for your participation.